There you go.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
I'm Sandy.
And I'm Al. I'm Ask the Pool Guy. You're Ask the Pool Girl, right?
I am.
Right.
And people are asking us a lot of questions
A lot of questions. So we're sitting here in the backyard of our office. This is where our brood of dogs get to play. And we decided we would come to you from the beautiful outdoors because we have some dry and warm and sunny and beautiful weather. And we thought that we would sit out here today and talk a little bit of pool philosophy, life philosophy, business philosophy, like we normally do.
Let's first talk about something a little bit larger than life. We got to see the giant as it was unveiled for the first time officially on Friday night, and we've decided, because it is so epic and spectacular, that we should really make it official, and we should invite you to come check out the giant with us. So this coming Friday night at 6 o'clock, we invite you to come check out the giant McFish with us.
You know, we get to surround ourselves, or we've been allowed, or we've been blessed to surround ourselves with amazing people.
We choose to hang out with talented, fun, creative people. How about that?
That's a perfect way of saying it.
Yes.
And some of those people are the artists that created this giant we're talking about.
And they created the giant we're talking about in Ask the Garden Gal, Jody Cook's
backyard, technically front yard because it's facing the lake. Yeah. And these are the same amazing, incredible artists that did the dragon for us and have done just incredible, spectacular things that we can't even put into words sometimes, I think. When you look at their capability to create just unbelievable things. I told Darren, I was on the phone with him yesterday, and Darren is I guess the lead artist. Deanna as well was intimately involved from start to finish, but I think it was more of the brainchild of Darren. Mm-hmm. And not to discredit Deanna, because she's incredible and what she does is incredible, but in this particular case I think Darren was sort of brainchild structured it, and then of course she made it look gorgeous and with their help. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I explained to him, I said, Darren, I'm telling you, you have 100 clients within 40 miles of this location right here that would pay you unbelievable amounts of money for a giant like this. Mm-hmm. Because when you look at what it is and how incredibly unique it is, there have got to be at least 100 people just within our 40-mile radius that would say, absolutely sign me up. They don't have to be on the lake. This one happens to be overlooking a lake, which is amazing. Boats can go by and see this huge giant just hanging out, its hand on its head. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the potential that people have and the artistic ability, that's just something that boggles my mind. And we talk about that all the time with both Darren and Deanna. They have this magical ability to create just the crazy coolest things, and we get to call them friends, and we get to hang out with them, and then we get to be a part of their life, which is pretty cool. I mean, we do our own really cool stuff, but they take art, industrial art / functional art, because the giant can be climbed on. It's not just something to be looked at. It's something that could be climbed on, and so it's a functional piece of art, and it's exceptional.
It is. Mm-hmm. I think one of our legendary clients, that's a whole nother set of stories in itself. As you know, we are very excited to work on the Lazy River this summer. The permits for that project have been slow coming because it's in conjunction with a house being built. So we're still kind of in the holding pattern for takeoff on that one. In the meantime, we started the project that quickly developed into a bit of a mystery for the homeowners, because there was the first design concept, which they liked and Al liked, and then Al had some more ideas, so he created a second design concept. And before the homeowners learned about that one, Al created a third design concept, which is what got turned in for permits without the homeowner really signing off on it, because it was going to be a surprise at that point.
I think when I explained it to him, I almost apologized and I said the first design, while everybody liked it, was amateur compared to the second design. It was amateur in that it was okay, but the second design changed everything about it. And then the third design just sort of tweaked it into the best of all of the pieces. But it went from being an amateur, I guess, is a amateur to me because of some of the stuff I've done. But I apologized to him that my first round in the design, which they thought was great, I apologized that just wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough. And the second design then took it to a whole nother level. And then the third design just sort of tweaked out the pieces of it, and it's going to be spectacular.
So we got started in the yard with the homeowner not knowing anything about what was contained in design number 3. And then Al showed them, or showed
the
him
rough paperwork
maybe
of what
the drawing of it.
Mhm.
So like they totally, to the nth degree, now understand what they're getting. Not
Yeah,
at all.
they still have no idea.
Not at all.
And yet,
I'm going to wrap this around to the giant, because when we were posting that we are going to see the epic giant, some of our legendary homeowners were curious about what it was all about, and Kaylee was chatting with Kevin, and she was telling him about the giant, and Kaylee almost wanted to say, you're probably going to have a D. Baker design element in your pool, but she didn't know if she should give it away. So don't tell anybody, but like the same people that brought you the epic dragon, or epic dragon and epic giant,
yeah, right, might be epically doing something.
Maybe.
Yes.
Maybe.
I was texting with Epicness just a few minutes ago about what it could look like, what we would do, and it's pretty interesting. Anyway, as we live in this yummy part of life and don't get caught up in the normal. I mean, that's one of those things that our society and the people get caught up in the normal, and that's just no fun place. I mean, it's normal, and we don't live there very often. I guess there's moments of normalcy, but getting to do things like this and hang around people like that and visualize, go out and seeing these people creating these amazing pieces of art and then incorporating some of that stuff into what we do is spectacular. Yeah. It's really something.
Just reflecting on like our life, my life, the most ordinary of experiences that I could have in my life any given day. Like I come to work here and I'm looking at the back of the office, because you can't tell because you're looking at me. No, don't show it. We're conjuring something in their imagination. Anyway,
okay.
On my most ordinary of days, I come into a magical place like this, and the baseline then is anything but ordinary, because it just, by nature of what it is,
land. Yeah.
It's developed into something with a life of its own.
I rolled in here today and I played in the barn building molds of these really cool diamonds. Now, I've already made 20 molds of diamonds, but when you have molds of diamonds, you have to make more molds of diamonds, and these ones are a little bit different so that I could create some other things. And again, it goes to, wow, that's work for me. That's me going to work, is playing in the barn, mixing up all these cool smooth-on products and making stuff, and I cast a bunch of stuff.
Well, all those kids that are into slime right now, like, in your future, somebody could, make it a career of playing with that slime.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
parents of kids who play with slime, don't be so quick to think that it's
Isn't that the
not
truth?
worthwhile.
Isn't that the truth? Because here I get to take these
Play with
5-gallon drums of stuff and mix them all together, and some of them end up sticky and turn into rubbery things, and then other things you mix. I love this process, and we may have showed it in past videos, but liquid plastics. And I get to take these 2 jars and I dump them together and I mix them, dump them into a mold, and in 5 minutes I watch this clear thing turn into solid white plastic. Then I pop them out of the mold in like 10 minutes, and here I have these faces, and I showed you a few of those today. And that's just kind of magical because you're watching it go from clear to white, and all this heat comes off of them, and then you pop them out of the mold and you have this white piece of plastic.
Yeah.
And it's shaped to whatever you pour it into. And today I was doing some faces and stuff, which we'll reveal what that's about moving forward. But that's work.
Yeah, it's really
tough.
hard.
It's not tough weekend work for us.
Yeah. Somebody, I think, was talking to Haley. Oh, maybe she was at the dentist last week or the week before, and when she was there, she was having a conversation, and I think the dentist and team are just really impressed that our team is what we are, because they've met Kaylee and they know the type of work that she does. So they were talking about, any plans for the weekend, and Kaylee had mentioned, well, I'm working this weekend, which happens most weekends, and they're like, oh, isn't that so sad? And so we've had rain every day, like in the year of 2019 so far, and it's been beautiful this weekend. So yesterday, while it was a Saturday, and everybody's like, oh, did you have to work on Saturday? I'm like, well, did you have to work, or did you get to work on a sunny day in Michigan on pool? So it's not that people have to work, it's that they get to work on what we do.
Yeah, and that woman didn't understand. Oh, poor you. You have to work on the weekend, or you have to work 6 days a week, or
you get to work.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a privilege to be able to do this stuff. Crazy thing. So yeah, you get to use a shovel there, and you get to do back-breaking hard labor. The really fun thing for me in this magical place is, while we're doing this very structural, heavy, hard work, at the same time, each of us is designing what skins it over, what makes it cool. I mean, you've got all the engineering behind holding it in the ground and dealing with frost and dealing with, all of the forces of nature, but then you get to do something over it that's spectacular. And we all get to just sort of dwell in that. And that's certainly something over the last couple days we've been spending a lot of time, and we called an emergency team meeting tomorrow after work to say, we have this opportunity to do something spectacular. Freaking-tacular. How are we going to accomplish this?
It's an emergency imagination meeting, because before the concrete truck arrives again to the job site, we have to be able to come up with a plan.
We have to have a plan. Yep. Yeah. And we could just make the decision ourselves and say, here's what we're doing, but that's a limited scope of my brain and your brain. But why not bring a magical group of people together and say, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Throw all the ideas on the table, and then let's make some decisions. Now, ultimately, maybe I'll make that decision, but it'll be with the input of a bunch of magical minds that have all different views of what life is and what life can be. And I'm pretty excited about what this thing can turn out to be.
I don't know if you get the sense or not. Hopefully you do. We try to explain.
Let's not forget, we're a pool company.
I know, we're a pool company, but we try to explain this as best we can by doing all these videos and talking about it so much, that our team really, really thrives, gets into, creates larger than life when we get to use our imagination. If we don't get to use our imagination, then I think we are all a little bit sad coming to this magical wonderland. We have to be able to use that imagination and tap into kind of what ifs and that fantastical kind of side of life, because there really is, even if somebody can't quite see it, if they come into one of our environments or our office, they get to glimpse it at least. And the word fantastical is so fantastical. We were approached by a writer for a local Michigan magazine. I don't know if it's print or online, or I don't know all the details of how that works. Anyway, she said, could I write an article about you? And they try to capture some of a certain way. And I said, well, it sounds fun, let's do it. So she sent over the draft yesterday, and in the first paragraph introduction, it was talking about fantastical projects. And I love the term, it's really sticking in my mind. So stay tuned, because that's a dog. You'll get to read all about our fantasticalness when it comes out in publication.
Well, I was thinking how this is our livelihood and this is our business, this is the world we live in, but we don't really spend our time in the spreadsheet of running a business or operating a business and profit loss statements. And while that's important to some, there's a line, and I was trying to, in my mind, get it clear while you were talking, that there's this line between being a business person to make money so that you can take the money to go live the life you want to live. And I think that's where most businesses find themselves. How can we increase our revenue so when we have enough, then we can take it, and then we can spend that extra time to go over here and do the thing that we think we want to do.
Sort of life.
Right. So I have a business life, and then the money I make, I create some personal whatever. Maybe it's a boat and you go on the lake or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And there's a point where some of us, most of us don't choose this, but some of us decide to say, the business is my life. And instead of focusing on the profit statements and the profit loss statements and the revenue and the money and the income and the growing it and the duplicating it and making it big, there's a point where some people, and maybe it's not most people, and that's okay, but there's a select group of people that decide that I'm going to make this the way that I live, and I'm going to do the thing that I absolutely love to do all the time, not just with the proceeds of my stress-filled life of business that I can take time away and do something else, but rather I'm going to live in it every moment. And I think we're the epitome of that, in terms of we don't worry about, although we have the same concerns, money to pay people and to pay suppliers and do the things, but we don't get caught up in the profits and losses of the thing, because instead we're so much loving the thing that even if we quote unquote lost money on the thing, we never lost money because we experienced the thing. And that's kind of a mind shift for me, for sure, is that we invested our lives into this thing that we loved to do. And it would be the same thing as taking your profits and then doing something that you like to do, so you have the experience. Well, we blended it together. We lived the experience, we did it, and now we have that in our bank of memory, that we got to do this thing that we love to do. And whether it made money or didn't make money is almost irrelevant, because the experience. Now, we could spend all of our time making money so we could take the little money we make and go have the experience, or we could live the experience through all of it and not worry. And that's kind of a neat place to be from my perspective. Most people would never do that. Out of social reasons, out of fear, out of you're not supposed to do that in business. I don't know. There's a lot of reasons not to. But how magical is it?
It really
that we just sort of live there. Yeah.
We do. That's exactly it. It's doing this thing so that everybody that works with us can be immersed in doing this thing while we're doing it, and it's adding to our lives, and it's an environment that fosters making choices that that serve us every day, instead of making choices that only serve us today but they won't tomorrow. Like everything that we do like organically combines into this like life, you know, work-life balance. I've gone on the record saying that's kind of bullshit, which when we frame it this way, like work-life balance isn't really a thing, because when you're living all the time pursuing things that are interesting and exciting and keep you challenged and are with people that you can enjoy, then like there's no balance involved, because you get that all the time. And that's, I think, where we find ourselves.
Yeah, I was
the sun keeps peeking in, and I do have red hair, so it's
gotta keep moving. We'll keep scooching and moving the camera if we need to.
Yeah,
I think of how many people that I know in my life who have a job that's okay, they chose a career that was profitable, they do things that they're supposed to do for money, and their moments are that 2 weeks vacation or that month off that they get through the year or the summer or the whatever, and that's when they're supposed to actually do something that makes them feel a certain way. And while that's a choice that each person makes, it makes me a little bit sad, because I can't get to do that all the time. And I was at a wedding last night, and I was sitting next to a guy, and he was trying to explain to his wife, he's been to our place here, and he was trying to explain it to her while in front of me, and I was explaining a bit of how we operate in our business, and they have a very traditional business. While their traditional business is a little cooler than some people's, it was interesting to hear him try to explain what he's been able to witness. And then he had said, do you mind if I bring my wife over there during business hours? Well, you can come anytime, because there's no such thing as business hours. Yeah. There's no such thing as 8 to 4, 9 to 5. It just, we're here when we're here. We're in it.
When we're not.
And we're not when we're not. And you're invited to come in at any time if we're here or not. If you're not here, let me know, and we'll get you in the door if that's what it takes. And that's just it's a different way. And as much as we talk about it, people don't understand. And maybe they do, maybe they're not supposed to, I'm not really sure. But it's a pretty interesting and neat way to just be. Because every day is just that. It's just the being part of life.
It is. Yesterday was pretty cool. As I got to work at the office on a Saturday, Katie came in, and we were mind mapping the stories we should tell from this season, or how to put the saga of living legendary online. Saga, that's another word that came on my radar this week.
Yeah.
And it's all about the sagas, not the stories. So as we were talking about it, we went from featuring just one project moving forward to featuring 2, and one with this whimsical nature. And we really don't know what Lazy River is going to turn into yet, because I have this strong sense of intuition that as soon as we break ground there,
it's going to go crazy, isn't it?
It is going to be completely different than anything we could have in our minds. And we just wrapped up the first project of the season, which is the Pleasant Valley Rustic Experience. And so mind mapping with Katie, I was talking about what we can cover and how we could frame the stories that we tell about this season, which will include pulling in some stories from previous years as well. I was using the tic-tac-toe for life, basically, and for business. If you've come across Our Certain Way, or the book that we kind of wrote to try and explain how we do this, that is entirely what it's based on. And I was getting so fired up and excited, because what we want to do is showcase the year of living legendary, but it's more than a year, it's like a life of living legendary, starting with featuring the homeowners that we've gotten to work with, our clients and customers, the current ones, the future ones, the past. You know, we get to deal with spectacular people all the time. And then we get to showcase, like, what does it take to think like them? Because for us to be this company thinking the way that we are, our entire team, then it takes a certain type of customer to be attracted to that, to say, come on in, don't tell me what you're doing, just make it magical like I know you will, on to the energy signature of everything, which comes through in everything that we do, everything we post online, all of our people, the things that we admire most about people. I had just done my birthday post last week, and I really talked about the energy signature of each person. Like, what is something that I really appreciate, admire in each person? And it's not a thing that they do, or it's not something that they say, but it's a quality
It's a way. It's a way that they are.
Who they are. So it's their certain way and their energy signature that I can get really excited about. And then we can talk about all the different ways that we interact with people and all the ways that our alliances, like people who make giants and people that create gardens in other people's yards, like, you know, Jody, like, it's her garden, it just happens to be in your yard. And it all just works in this like uber yummy way. So I was getting super excited yesterday talking about this with Katie. And I had just watched a talk that Katie gave not too long ago, maybe it was a month or two at this point, where she was talking about some different pieces of her journey. And as she was being introduced to go up on stage, the person introducing her put into words kind of that unexplainable thing that I think people come across with our company as well. He was saying that I can come up with this idea and like barely be able to use words to explain it, and Katie already knows how to map the whole thing out and tell the story and showcase the saga in video. And I was really getting that sense yesterday, because with as many words as I'm trying to use now to explain it, I know that when we start to put all those clips and all those pieces together, like, it will flow into this story and it'll have people understanding it like they wouldn't be able to if we just tried to rely on our words.
Yeah. Every time I try to articulate living this way, I stumble a little bit, because it's not about ego. It's not about, ooh, look at me, because it has nothing to do with me, but everything to do with me. It's my desire. I have this overwhelming desire to want others to be able to experience their lives in this way. Not my life. I don't want anyone to have to experience my life. Although mine is magical and yummy, I want you to experience your life with the same attitude, with the same, you know, your own perception, but in general, this free feeling of living a life that matters, that has meaning, that feels good, that it's not full of challenge and struggle and strife and depression and anger and angst and, you know, and abuses and all the things that life is just throwing at us. There's stuff, it is what it is. But being able to sort of just block that out, because guess what? We have that same stuff swirling in our lives that we choose just not to be a part of. Yeah. And each one of us could make the decision to go down that rabbit hole and go through all of those things. But instead we go, life is this, I'm going to make it what I want it to be. And it's about each one of us individually, and it's very different. If you explain living legendary to each person, while the overwhelming blanket of it is this sort of laissez-faire, enjoy because we have this limited time on the earth, enjoy, it sort of blankets all of us, but each one of us has a very different specific.
Very laissez-faire, yet very...
But intentional at the same time.
Intentionally,
yes.
On point with where each person wants to go. So very proactively kind of defined, and yet very loose and go with what it is.
Yeah, when I say laissez-faire, it makes it seem like it's just whatever.
Which is
and it kind of is
like.
with direction, with some sense of what I hope that this can be. And while we can't necessarily direct it to be exactly that, But if we have our intentions,
Mm-hmm.
our intentions draw us toward that thing.
Let's talk about frequencies for a minute, because I've got a couple stories that I just thought would be cool to tell in this frequency conversation. So I was watching a video on Facebook about frequencies and how we as people are just like a bundle of frequencies interacting with the world. And if you've ever walked into a room and you felt the energy change, it either could be really good, it could be really bad, it could have no impact, or it could just be so flat that you barely can feel it. Those are all frequencies of the environment around us. And the video that I was watching was talking about, it could be used in the military, and it can be used by marketers or by stores. Like if you go in and they're like creating a certain frequency, then you could feel a certain way. And that ties into like when somebody comes into our office. I know Frank the other day had said he was just sitting there looking around, and he's like, even if somebody had the same stuff, like they just couldn't duplicate this, which makes total sense because it's the frequency of everything. It's the intent that was used when I took the piece of metal that Al dug out of the dumpster for me that accidentally got thrown away, because it did sort of look like trash, but really it wasn't trash because it turned into a fantastic flower again. So it's taking that with that intention that makes it something that somebody couldn't duplicate with just stuff. And that's maybe where the living legendary nuance comes in, that it's not just flippantly making all these decisions, but it's making them at a certain frequency or with a certain intent that kind of adds that essence to it.
It's a yumminess. It's a love for life.
And the love is in the mix.
The love is in the mix.
We talked about that
with concrete. And if we can love the mix as we're making it, then what we're turning it into already starts its birth. So just to back it up, I often tell the story when I'm getting someone new on the concrete mixer, mixing the concrete for the artist that's going to apply it and carve and create something on a project. And I help them understand that it's as important for them to love the process of mixing that concrete and putting their essence of love into what they're doing and what it is that they're making, so that when they dump it into a wheelbarrow and they wheel it over there and that artist is now lovingly applying it to something, it's a very different feel than hating your job and throwing stuff in a wheelbarrow and getting it over there just so you can get another one done, so that another 15 minutes can go by so that you can get home and go to do something else. Very different feel. If you can love the experience of doing the thing that you're doing, then the love that comes out of the end product is so important. And I think that's something that most people just don't even fathom. It's a thing that they do.
Something just became very clear to me as you were explaining that. We've talked about our certain way on the phone, and how when people call in and they want us to work with them, we're just listening for them to breathe wrong. And if we hear all the right things from them, we're willing to go further and go down the path of working with them. What we're really doing is measuring their frequency. Because if they call in and they have a chip on their shoulder, or this is something they have to do, but they're doing it begrudgingly, and they're doing it with an energy that's anything but positive, we walk away. Because what we're creating, whether it's service and mucking out a pool, or it's creating magical fantasy lands, it all has to come at that frequency. And occasionally, and this is the thing, like we always know in our gut. You always know in your gut when you're walking into a situation. If it feels good, do more of it, and if it doesn't, stop. And we often try to override that gut feeling with our brains, because we think,
but business, but money,
wrong.
but
maybe it's my own stuff, maybe it's whatever it is, which maybe it is, but if it's not at the right frequency that it's a match, then it's never a match. And the best company in the world can go to a homeowner's home and they can create something that looks beautiful and it's wonderful. But if the homeowner wasn't at a frequency where they could receive it, then they will finish the process and it will not be positive because they didn't come at it from the right frequency. So that is a whole other layer of this.
Well, I think that's something that we continue to discover while we stumbled into it, and stumble isn't quite the word, because as soon as we try to articulate the word, it diminishes what the concept is. We can't quite put into words exactly how it is, but we've somewhat stumbled into this understanding. While we're groping with understanding it, we're also applying it, and the more that we witness it, and the more that we have social proof of it. I mean, that's something that I know our company, we have a lot of social proof that what we do works in a magical way. Now, it may not work in a sense of someone else that thinks the business and life should run a different way. It is hard to try to quantify for sure, and yet look at what our lives have become, and how fortunate we are, and how blessed we are, and the gratefulness of being able to live this way because somehow we discovered it. Right. And each person has to discover it on their own.
And we love meeting new people and trying new things, and not everyone has the same frequency or the same things that are exciting to them. But when it's like that positive frequency, it doesn't matter what else somebody's interests are or what their views are on different things. If it's done with that right intention and the right frequency, it's always a match, and that's magical.
I think something that I've discovered is that when someone is truly living authentically, if they're living from their heart out versus living from their head out, it's always a positive thing. Now, we can have very different views on things. We can have different things that we like. We can be very different as human beings. But when we're living authentically from our heart, from a feeling place versus from a thinking place, because it's easy to think your way into something or think your way out of something. It is not so easy to feel your way into something or feel your way out of something. It requires a lot more angst and love at the same time to feel your way through things. And so many people want to think their way into a business decision or a contract. And while that works in the normal world, it doesn't work in our world. Thinking our way in or out of something is just a bad idea. Feeling our way in or out of something is a magical way. And our gut and our heart and our emotional base, when we're in touch with it, never is wrong. Ever, ever, ever is it going to prove you wrong. Now, if you try to think your way into, should I feel this way, should I feel that way, that's when you're going to have the challenges. But when you feel your way into something or feel your way out of something, it will never serve you in a wrong way. It will always serve you properly. I think that's a huge part of the living legendary way. Is let's feel our way into good experiences and good customers and good, lovely, amazing projects that fill us with joy every day.
When we're living authentically as us too, we can accept others where they are, and there's no need to convince anybody of anything. There's no need to convince them of the way we think or that they should grow or change. And I'm reflecting now on a conversation that we had a few weeks ago with someone, and in the moment that we were having this discussion, it was obvious that it was very important to this person to receive recognition or acclaim for their input into what they were doing with their business. And from where I sit, I could say that it doesn't matter who gets the credit if everybody is on this team. And the specific example that I can share is going to a trade show or being involved in the industry, or even coming across people that I would think would know a little bit more about our company than they do. They will look at me and say, oh, so you're still the receptionist over there, or the secretary, or you work for Al, or whatever the case may be. And it's so much easier to smile and nod and say, yep, that I still work there. It's
the
still
box
great.
that
I
they
work for
put you
Al.
in.
That is just a much smoother experience sometimes than trying to launch into a whole description or, you know, like talking about anything else. So in those moments, and I guess maybe this is the underlying lesson, is meet people where they are, and wherever their level of understanding is if that's the conclusion you drew, then we're going to go with that, because I don't
It doesn't
take any
matter
issue with
necessarily,
that. Yeah.
right? And there comes a time where it makes sense to explain that away into what it really is, but in a lot of cases it kind of doesn't matter.
And I think we come across that when we're screening new construction projects on the phone, and we've got a great process and a certain way that people go through, and it's pretty obvious on the front side if somebody calls and they either haven't checked out the website, or they really don't know much about us, or they're looking for something we don't do. It's very clear to us, but it's not always clear to them. And while we could try to take the time to explain it, they won't necessarily understand, and it could just make things worse, trying to force someone into an understanding they're not ready for. So sometimes when people call, if we can't quite explain it that way, we'll use other methods, you know, like we always have room for that most magical next project. We don't have room for when people don't ask for that. So we don't say it that way every time, but we'll use like very generic kind of layman's terms to express that same point.
Yeah. Just your story there reminds me of when many years ago, before you were involved, I would have similar situations where my brother-in-law Mike worked with me, and he was older than me. And customers are very often drawn to the older person, must be the person in charge or the owner of the company. And many, many times we would go out to a job and they would gravitate to him because Mike is considerably 15 years older than me. Now, doesn't matter so much now that I'm an older guy, but when I'm 28 years old and he's 40 some years old, the customer is going to gravitate to that. And then the official term would be he was working for me, but I always just let that go and let them talk to him as if he was the owner, because it was more important to get the end result than to get the credit. And I've certainly seen you do that over and over and over again, where we're equal in what we're doing here and equal partners in what we're doing, and yet there's this perception that, and not without reason, there's thousands of videos of me talking about our business and not thousands of videos of you talking about our business, so people make that assumption immediately that it's me and that you just work for me, and yet it's so not that not anywhere close to that.
If that's how you explain it to people,
and it's okay.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up to that. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we just want the end result that allows us the yummy life, the living a life that's legendary, and legendary in its own way, not
in our way for other people. Like our way is our way, but your way is your way.
Yours, right. And not legendary in that it's world renowned, because it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. It's legendary in our way, that we've got to live this successful, yummy life that has a very different meaning than what most people would call a successful, yummy life.
So the use of the word legendary makes me think of another legendary pool and spa channel that recently came onto the scene in the pool industry, and the use of the word legendary in that case is very over the top, hyped up, all about the pomp and circumstance, and that perhaps is the same as me working for you and the company. Like, I prefer a much understated approach, because
there's room for all of it, though. There's room for all of it. And in our case, it's about living an understated life from the perspective of society, but an overstated life when it comes to personal living, enjoying it. Yeah. Just kind of living in the authenticity of being human and being us and being this great experience of living. I mean, it's an experiment that we all get to go through, and we can choose the good path or the bad path, the right path or the wrong path, the yummy path or the horrible path, or all. We really make those choices every day. Yeah. And yet most people would assume that life chose it for them, that some computer in the sky dictated what they're going to be, and yet it's not true at all. We get to choose that every single day. We just have to choose it, and that's the difference. Most people won't choose it. They think that somehow life has designated for them something, and I'm here to say, you choose it every single day. Yeah. You have to make those right choices. They're micro habits. I talk in all the time about the micro habits that we have in our lives, and those little momentary, moment-to-moment choices that we make change everything about who we are as human beings. And I know that our philosophy as a company, as each individuals leading a cool team of people, is that we choose to focus on the yummy things every day. The things happen, the good, the bad, the whatever. We don't even really put words into good or bad. That's kind of a ridiculous thing to say, but it's what people understand. Mm-hmm. But those things happen. The stuff of life happens for all of us, and we each individually and as a team choose the yummy ones. Choose to focus on the good ones and not worry about the other ones. So live that way. I mean, it's your choice, but I would suggest that just because it's an amazing way to live.
I would also suggest that, and I think that's the perfect note to end on, and encourage you, if you took the time to listen to us, like make that decision.
In whatever you're doing, in any career path, and any point you find yourself in life, young or old or anything, and no one's going to choose you. You're going to choose you. Yeah. Or you're going to let life push you into something, or people push you into something. Choose yourself at any age, at any point in your career. Choose you, and then live it legendary.
Absolutely. So, we'll see you next time.